That's right, Halloween week, ladies and gentlemen. The Line of Scrimmage, Halloween edition. Welcome to another edition of the Line of Scrimmage. I'm your ugly ass host, Ryan Neff. Halloween in 2 days. Do you have your candy ready? Give it to the kiddies, sugar them up so their parents can be up with them all night. I'm sure they'll thank you. All right, enough of John Carpenter's theme music. Again, welcome to the Halloween edition of the Line of Scrimmage. At some point in the hour, hope to have Tony Gerdeman on. He covers Ohio State football. He's the lead beat writer for Buckeye Huddle, covering Ohio State. The Ozone alum. He is the co-host of at Buckeye Weekly. That's a podcast. You can reach him at tonygerdeman@gmail.com. He says, be kind instead. I agree with him. So I'm just going to jump into it. Oh, in case anybody's wondering, there is college football on today. I don't know why they decided to, have it on Tuesday when the World Series is going on. Right now, early on, Texas State up on Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. It's 3-0. Midway through the second period, Florida International leads New Mexico State 7-3. And kicking off any minute, Louisiana Tech is at Sam Houston. Going to jump into last week. Give me just a second here. I'm going to go down the games from last week in order of which they were played. Top 25 matchups. We got kicked off last Thursday with Pitt handling Syracuse. 41-13. Pitt jumped out to the huge lead. Syracuse never threatened. Easy win for Pitt. Unfortunately, Syracuse, Kyle McCord, probably the worst day of his career. 35 of 64, 321 yards, no touchdowns. He threw 5 picks. A couple of pick sixes, actually, which really hurt. He was sacked many times at the tune of minus 32 yards. Overall, Syracuse ran the ball 29 times for 6 yards. Being sacked that many times didn't help. Throwing the ball 64 times is, you're coming from behind. So, leading receivers for Syracuse, Emmanuel Ross, Jackson Meeks, and Trevor Pena. Each had 5 receptions apiece. Justin Barron was their leading tackler at 7. For Pitt, Eli Holstein, 11 of 15, 108, 2 touchdowns. Desmond Reed, 11 carries, 47 yards. Raphael Williams Jr. and Sincere Lee, each with a touchdown apiece. Really, Pitt didn't have to do much offensively because of the pick sixes. You're throwing, 5 interceptions. I mean, he should have been pulled after the 3rd interception. Raheem Biles was the leading Pitt defender, 12 tackles. Again, ladies and gentlemen, difference in the game. The 5 turnovers killed Syracuse. You're turning it over 5 times. You run the ball for 6 yards. Recipe for disaster. Pitt improves to 7-0, 3-0 in the ACC. Syracuse 5-2 overall. 2-2 in the ACC. On Friday, Boise State beats UNLV in a really good game. 29-24. I thought UNLV would come away with the W, but they did not. Boise State, Maddox Matson, 18 of 33, 209, a touchdown and a pick. Ashton Genty, the workhorse, 33 carries, 120 yards on a touchdown. Matt Lauder, 4 catches, 38 yards, and a touch. Leading tackler was Alexander Tubner, 14 total tackles. For UNLV, Haj Malik Williams was 16 to 21, 179, 2 touchdowns, a pick. He also ran the ball 19 times, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Ricky White had 5 catches, 57 yards. Jackson Woodard and Jalen Catalan each had 10-plus tackles apiece. Fairly evenly matched throughout. Boise State just made one more play than UNLV did. Could have gone either way. Boise State now 6-1, 3-0 in conference. UNLV is 6-2, 2-1 in conference. And that would be the Mountain West, ladies and gentlemen. On Saturday, this will be in sequential order. Top 25, I'm going to go from 22nd on down. In another thrilling game in an ACC matchup, SMU beats Duke in overtime, 28-27. Evenly matched. I didn't see the end of the game, so I don't remember if Duke went for 2 to try and win the game or if they missed an extra point. I don't remember, to be quite honest with you. For SMU, Kevin Jennings was 13 to 24, 258, a touchdown, but he threw 3 picks, which didn't help. Brashard Smith, 26 carries, 117, and 2 touchdowns. Roderick Daniels Jr., 2 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Isaiah Nwokobia, he had 13 total tackles. For Duke, Malik Murphy had a good game, 27 to 48, 295, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Star Thomas, 17 carries, 65 yards, and a touch. Eli Pancol, 11 catches, 138 and a touch. And the leading Duke receiver, Kendi Charles, with 11 total tackles. SMU turned the ball over 6 times, ladies and gentlemen. 6. Duke didn't turn it over any. And somehow SMU won a football game, turning it over 6 times. Duke was better on third downs. Actually, it was 50-50. Duke's inability to run the football, though, I thought sort of hurt them in the end. But, I mean, if you turn the ball over 6 times and you can't win a football game, shame on Duke. Yeah, you don't see that often when one team doesn't turn it over and the other team turns it over 6 times, but you still lose. Not good. SMU is now 7-1 overall, 4-0 in the ACC. Duke is 6-2 overall, 2-2 in the ACC. Both bowl eligible, by the way. Ole Miss in an SEC matchup beat Oklahoma 26-14. I'm a little disappointed in Ole Miss this year. I thought that they would go on to bigger and better things with the roster that they put together. But in the end, they win. Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold didn't play bad. He was 22 of 31, 182, and 2 touchdowns. Javante Barnes, 16 carries, 67 yards. He also had 5 catches for 57 yards. Leading tackler was Danny Stutzman, 9 total tackles. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, 22 of 30, 311, a touchdown, no picks. Henry Parrish Jr., 15 carries, 44 yards, and a touch. Excuse me. Ole Miss only ran it 31 times for 69 yards. That needs to improve big time. Caden Priestcorn, 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touch. Leading tacklers were Suntarine Perkins and Chris Paul, 11 total tackles apiece. I really thought the difference in the ball game was the fact that Ole Miss was just able to sustain drives more so than Oklahoma. Oklahoma won the turnover battle, they won the rushing battle, but when they counted most, they couldn't sustain drives. So Ole Miss is 6-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Oklahoma is now 4-4 overall, 1-4 in the SEC. I was one of those who thought Oklahoma would struggle this year in the SEC, and they have. Kansas State beat Kansas 29-27. That was a Big 12 matchup. Kansas State, I believe, won it late on a touchdown, I think. I'm trying to remember. And it's escaping me. But nonetheless, Kansas State gets the win 29-27. Again, just looking at the stats here. Give me just a second. For Kansas, Jalen Daniels was 18-31, 209, a touchdown and a pick. Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels both had 66 yards rushing, touchdown apiece. Trevor Wilson, 4 catches, 69 yards, your leading receiver. Luke Grimm had a touchdown. Leading tackler for Kansas was J.B. Brown with 8 total tackles. Avery Johnson for Kansas State was 19-34, 253, 2 touchdowns, no picks. DJ Giddens, 18 carries, 102 yards rushing. Jace Brown, 5 catches, 98 yards receiving, and your leading tackler was Austin Romaine with 6 total tackles. Both teams were able to run the ball effectively. Again, it was an evenly matched game. Kansas State, again, making one more play than Kansas did. Kansas State with the big Big 12 win against one of their rivals. They're now 7-1 overall, 4-1 in the Big 12. Kansas, who is now 2-6 overall, they are 1-4 in the Big 12. Alabama beat the hell out of Missouri. It was a repeat of the Texas A&M game when Missouri played Texas A&M. Missouri they looked like hell. They couldn't do anything. It was an ass whooping. Excuse me. Missouri, Drew Pine was 6-12 for 42 yards, 3 picks, no touchdowns. Marcus Carroll, Jamal Roberts each had 17 carries and 70-plus yards apiece. Brian Norfleet, 3 catches, 23 yards. Luther Burden, III, was held in check, 3 catches for 3 yards. Marvin Burks Jr., 10 total tackles. For Alabama, Jalen Milroe, 16-26, 215, no touchdowns, no picks. Collectively, Alabama ran the ball 37 times for 271 yards and 4 touchdowns. Hermie Bernard, 5 catches, 82 yards, leading receiver. Jihad Campbell, 8 total tackles. Again, difference in the game. Missouri just could not sustain drives. 3 turnovers. Alabama didn't turn it over any times. Alabama's defense came into play. Alabama now 6-2 overall, 3-2 in the SEC. Mizzou 6-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Indiana beat Washington 31-17. They didn't need Kevin Rourke this game. Indiana, ladies and gentlemen, is a dark horse to win the Big Ten. Will Rogers for Washington was 19-26, 202, no touchdowns, 2 picks, which hurt. Jonah Coleman, 19 carries, 104 yards rushing. Jeremiah Hunter, Kiki Latu, and Denzel Boston, each with 4 catches apiece. Alfonso Tupatala, Mikel Esteen, Carson Bruner, each had 10-plus total tackles apiece. For Indiana, Tavon Jackson, admirable, 11-19, 124, touchdown, and a pick. Justice Ellison, 29 carries, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Receiving, really, they didn't, only 124 yards collectively receiving, but Indiana ran the ball well. 52 times for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aiden Fisher, your leading tackler, with 8 total tackles for Indiana. One of the interceptions Will Rogers threw was a pick 6. Washington was 3 of 11 on third downs, and Indiana was 8 of 15. Indiana was in control. I would say basically the whole game. Indiana is now 8-0 in the Big Ten. I'm sorry, 8-0 overall. 5-0 in the Big Ten. Washington 4-4 overall. 2-3 in the Big Ten. In one of the surprise games, I picked Navy in this one. Shame on me. Navy was a turnover machine. Notre Dame beats the shit out of Navy, 51-14. Wasn't close, period. For Notre Dame, Riley Leonard was 13 of 21, 178, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jeremiah Love, 12 carries, 102, and 2 touchdowns. Riley Leonard and Kedron Young each had a touchdown apiece. Notre Dame ran the ball 40 times for 265 yards. Jordan Faison, 4 catches, 52 yards. Jack Kaiser, Jalen Sneed with 9 total tackles apiece. For Navy, again, turnover machine. Blake Horvath was just 7 of 13, 88 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. He also ran the ball 14 times for 129 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Navy ran the ball well, too. 43 carries, 222 collectively, 2 touchdowns. Receiving game was non-existent. Colin Ramos and Kyle Jacob with 10-plus tackles apiece. Again, difference in the ball game. Navy, 6 turnovers, Notre Dame, none. There's your difference in the ball game. Navy lost 5 fumbles. 5. You can't turn the ball over like that. Navy is 6-1 overall. Notre Dame is 7-1 overall. Excuse me. BYU continues to be undefeated. They go on the road in Orlando, beat Central Florida 37-24. BYU, for the most part, was in control. BYU, Jake Retzlaff was 16 of 24, 228, 2 touchdowns, no picks. LJ Martin, 15 carries, 101, and a touchdown. BYU ran the ball 51 times for 252 yards. Chase Roberts, 2 catches, 75 yards, and a touch. Crew Wakely and Isaiah Glasker, each with 5 total tackles. Central Florida, Dylan Rizk was 6 of 10 for 102, a touchdown, no picks. RJ Harvey, 16 carries, 127, and 2 touchdowns. Jacoby Jones, 6 catches, 116, and a touch. Dalen Dotson, 8 total tackles. A difference in the game for me when I went back and took a look at the stats. BYU 7 of 15 on third downs, and UCF was 2 of 10. So UCF could not sustain drives, and that's what killed them in the end. BYU is now 8-0 overall, 5-0 in the Big 12. UCF 3-5 overall, 1-4 in the Big 12. Again, hoping to have Tony Gerdeman come on here. Big matchup between Ohio State and Penn State this week. No news on Drew Allar if he's going to play for Penn State. We shall see. In a game, I picked Texas A&M to win. In an SEC battle, Texas A&M beats LSU 38-23. A huge win for them. LSU was actually up 17-7 at the half, and then Texas A&M just took over in the second half. Garrett Nussmeier had a bad game. Garrett Nussmeier was 25 of 50, 405 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he threw the 3 interceptions, which some of them were not good. LSU couldn't run the ball worth a shit. 22 carries collectively for 35 yards. LSU receiving Aaron Anderson and Kyron Lacey, each with over 100 yards a pop. Braden Swinson and Whit Weeks, 7 total tackles apiece. For Texas A&M, they did not have to throw the ball at all. Connor Weigman was 6 of 18 for 64 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. But Texas A&M, 46 carries, 245 yards collectively for 5 rushing touchdowns. Marcel Reed with 3 rushing touchdowns, and Le'Veon Moss with 2. Noah Thomas, 1 catch, 54 yards. Leading tackler, Taurine York. Really, for me, it was the Nussmeier interceptions, plus the fact that LSU just could not run the football. Spelled doom. So LSU is now 6-2 overall in the 3-1 in the SEC. Texas A&M 7-1 overall, still undefeated in SEC play, 5-0. Miami beat poor Florida State 36-14. That wasn't close. A season for Florida State to forget, unfortunately. Florida State, Brock Glenn was 5 of 18 for 54 yards and a touch. Luke Kromenhoek, the other quarterback, had 11 carries for 71 yards. Florida State's passing game was non-existent. Earl Little Jr., KJ Sampson, Fentrell Cypress II, each with 6 tackles apiece. Cam Ward was 22 of 35, 208, no touchdowns, no picks. Damian Martinez, 15 carries, 148, and 2 touchdowns. Isaiah Horton, 6 catches at 65 yards. Francisco Mauigoa, 7 total tackles. Difference in the game, again, Florida State could not run the ball. Couldn't really pass the ball all that well. I mean, respectable, 133 yards rushing, but they were 3 of 13 on third downs. Clean game, no turnovers. But when you can't sustain drives against a team like Miami this year, you're not going to win many games. Florida State now 1-7 overall, 1-6 ACC. Miami 8-0 overall, 4-0 in the ACC. Texas with a squeaker over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt almost played giant killer again. Texas is actually up 21-10 at the half, and then ever since the beatdown against Georgia, Texas might still be licking their wounds. Quinn Ewers was 27-37, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns, or 3 touchdowns, but 2 picks. He hasn't looked right coming off that injury he sustained back in week 2. Quintravion Wisner, 17 carries, 79 yards. DeAndre Moore Jr., 6 catches, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Anthony Hill Jr., 8 total tackles. For Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, 16-29, 143, 2 touchdowns, but the 2 picks. He also ran the ball 16 times for 67 yards and a touchdown. Junior Sherrill, 5 catches, 62 yards and a touch. Brian Longwell with 11 total tackles. Vandy turned it over 3 times, Texas twice. Really looking at the stats, Vanderbilt was 3 of 12 on third down. Texas was 9 of 15. And look, Vanderbilt had their opportunities. Texas, holds on. Texas 7-1 overall, 3-1 in the SEC. Vanderbilt now 5-3 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Let's see here. Give me just a second. Ohio State struggled against Nebraska. They still got the W. They win 21-17. Again, Ohio State to me just doesn't. They haven't just. Just no balance. They win 21-17. Nebraska had them on the ropes. They snatched defeat away from victory. On Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, 21-32, 152, no touchdown, a pick. Dante Dowdell, 14 carries, 60 yards and a touchdown. Thomas Fedone, the second, 4 receptions, 55 yards. Deshaun Singleton, 10 total tackles. Will Howard for Ohio State, 13-16, 221, 3 touchdowns, a pick. Unfortunately, Ohio State could not run the ball. 31 carries collectively for 64 yards. Carnell Tate, 4 catches, 102 and a touch. Cody Simon, 8 total tackles. When I went back and took a look at the stats, Nebraska could have won the game. I mean, Ohio State was 1 of 10 on third downs. Not good. Nebraska was 5 of 16. Just Ohio State made one more big play than Nebraska did. I see Tony Gerdeman is in the green room. Well, before I bring him on, I got to do this, though. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be the Ohio State fight song. Ohio State has a monumental matchup. Second time in 3 weeks. They lost to Oregon. They got to go on the road to Penn State. We know what's going to happen with Drew Lar. Let's bring him on. There he is, Tony Gerdeman. How you doing, Tony?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good. So let's get into last week's game first. I don't know if they were still smarting from Oregon and looking ahead to Penn State at the same time. They just seemed lackadaisical. They seemed like they were going through the motions. Didn't really seem like there was any sense of urgency. Look, Nebraska could have won the game, but look, winning teams find ways to win. Ohio State got the W. It was harder fought than what most Ohio State fans thought it was going to be after Indiana put the pasting on Nebraska. What were your takeaways from this particular game?
Well, the first takeaway, which was something that I took away well before the game, is that Ohio State fans should not be expecting Ohio State to do what Indiana did to Nebraska, because Nebraska turned the ball over 5 times in that game, and I think or stopped on fourth down 5 times, and that was almost a perfect performance in so many ways. So yeah, that's a rarity. So don't go in expecting that. Do
Hmm.
go in expecting something better than they got, though, for sure. And 2 weeks in a row now, they can't run the ball. When you look at Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, if you take Henderson's 2 runs against Oregon away that went for 70 yards, those two guys have averaged 2 yards a carry in their last 2 games. And that's not good enough. They can't get anything going on the ground. And they have a quarterback that can help them in that. And I think they're going to continue to employ that. Will Howard has yet to be explosive in the run game. He's been
Hmm.
effective, but we've seen him at Kansas State with 3 career 70-yard runs in his time there. So I think they need to get that going a little bit, but also, they definitely don't want to get him hurt or anything like that. They know what would happen if he does go down. They've got to get the running game going though, and it's gonna be a challenge to do it this week for sure. But they should have been able to run it a little bit better than they did against Nebraska. Nebraska's got good defense for who they've faced this year, but Ohio State should have been able to run the ball better. They threw the ball pretty well. They just didn't have, they just didn't. They had under 50 snaps for just the third time in the last decade. So
Hmm.
they're 1 of 10 on third downs, and really that was what you're talking with Ryan Day today and Chip Kelly. That was the main message today. Is the reason, one of the reasons the offense was so underwhelming was because they couldn't convert a third down.
Hmm.
And if they had done that, then they'd obviously had more snaps, had more production. But going 1 for 10 on third downs, they're lucky they came out of this game with a win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at Quinshon Judkins had 10 carries for 29 yards. Travion carried at 10 for 25 yards. You would think they would put more of an onus on trying to run the ball more. Um, it's just when I was watching the game, back and forth. I was at the casino, actually watching the games. It's just like you were just waiting for one of those two to like get the train start rolling, and it just never happened. I don't know if they got away from a little bit because again, receiving wise, Carnell Tate with the 4 catches for 102 and a touch, and Jeremiah has 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. But again, Penn State, um, they're going to have to run the ball better. Like we don't know what's going to happen with Drew Lar, who's going to start. But if you want to sustain drives and keep that Penn State offense off the field, you're going to have to run the ball a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if you go back and look, they did pretty well on first downs, and
Mm-hmm.
they just second and third down they were not good. They were getting decent gains on first down, and certainly efficient enough to do more than they did in this game. But yeah, if they're not converting third downs, then you're just giving the ball right back. And you talk about the getting things going with the running game. They just didn't have the ball enough to do really get anything going, because you only had 4 targets for Jeremiah Smith and four
Right.
targets for Emeka Ibuka. That's not enough for either one of those guys. That should never be enough. But the thing is, it's like, well, you should always be able to give the ball, to Quinshon Judkins more than 10 times, or Travion Henderson more than 10 times. And when you only have 47 or 48 snaps, there's just not enough to go around to make to get everybody what they should be getting, or what you think they should be getting. And so yeah, you gotta, if they do this again, if they're 1 of 10 on third downs in this game against Penn State, they're probably losing by 2 touchdowns.
So, what's the feeling overall after 7 games in Columbus as far as where the team's at? I know they're ranked fourth. They're 6-1 overall. They're 3-1 in the Big Ten, but it almost seems like they're 4-3. You know what I mean?
Uh,
That's the vibe. That's the kind of the vibe I'm getting out of Columbus. Is like, yeah, they're 6-1, but it feels more like 4-3, and we're 2-2 in the Big Ten.
yeah, do I know what you're talking about? I'm in Columbus. I'm part of a website. I am on Twitter. I definitely know what you're talking about. And that the um the Oregon game, which is a 1 point loss or whatever on the road in a final seconds, where Ryan Day talked about they lost the battle, the running battle, the rushing battle. They lost the turnover battle. They lost the explosive plays battle, and they lost the game by 1 point or whatever. It's so long ago now. They lost by 1 point or whatever, and 1 second that maybe should or shouldn't have been on the clock, and you get a chance to win that game. But then you go and they had an opportunity to bounce back, and what people saw this past Saturday against Nebraska has the apoplectic is probably a good word for the fan base right now. You can I don't think it's you can lose that game at Oregon. It's not unexpected, and they lost it. It's the best loss this season by anybody probably, and but to follow that up with a game against Nebraska where offense looks not good, offensive line looks bad. You've already lost your best offensive lineman, your most talented offensive lineman, Josh Simmons at left tackle. So that's already created the fact coming out of that Oregon game is that Simmons was a bigger loss than the game was. And so you've seen how they're trying to go about replacing him, and it's not gone well. And he was the one guy on that offensive line that you could not lose, and they lost him. So now everybody else has to pick it up and do better. And it's been a struggle so far. So yeah, the mood is not great right now in Columbus, and yes, they are still ranked 4th in the nation. And if they don't beat Penn State, you'll have a situation where your 2 losses are to, at the time, the 2 number 3 teams. 2 number 3 teams on the road, which is it's not a fireable offense by any means, but it'd be a frustrating fact for Ohio State fans who were absolutely sure and were pretty much guaranteed this year was going to be a playoff season at the very least, and now you're so this is a very big game for Ryan Day. I think it's a bigger game for Day than for James Franklin in terms of mood and needing it and all of that narrative point of view.
I think what was more shocking to me and a lot of people was the fact that Ohio State was coming off a bye, and that's the way they looked. If it would have been the follow-up week to Oregon, beat up, emotional loss, the whole 9 yards, maybe a little bit more defensible, but you're coming off a bye. Granted, Nebraska took it on the chin against Indiana. They weren't going to turn it over 5 times again, but it's the way they looked coming off a rest that was a little bit more shocking to me.
Yeah, and you'll have coaches say talk about rust or whatever. It takes a while to get back into it after a bye week, and they try to stay on schedule throughout the off week. And I just think every game is different in terms of how they handle the bye week and what the effect is, what the impact is. They were licking their wounds for a few days after that Oregon game, and maybe it took them a while. This is 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row. Will Howard has talked about this being a wake up call. Like maybe you shouldn't have hit snooze before the Nebraska game if you needed another wake up call. And so it'll be interesting to see how wide awake they are for a 12 p.m. kickoff at Penn State with everybody watching.
Well, I mean, you should be wide awake too. Clock management, Oregon game. Slide 1 second sooner, you get your timeout, and maybe you're kicking a field goal. So you better watch what you say sometimes. So let's look ahead to the Penn State game. Again, this is all going to depend. I mean, it's still up in the air with Drew Allar. James Franklin has said it's probably going to be a game time decision. So we're probably going to not know up until 11:55 a.m. Or whatnot. Look, both teams offensively and defensively are ranked in the top 4 in the Big Ten. I'm leaning toward Penn State just because I'm not liking what I'm seeing out of the running game from Ohio State. Penn State, very good against the run. Look, Ohio State is going to have to do a lot more in this game than they did against Oregon. And look, they played well enough to beat Oregon. I mean, you knew it was going to be a back and forth tussle. This one as well. Again, you talk about the loss of Simmons. I think in order for Ohio State to win this game, they are going to have to sustain drives in the run game. Now, if Drew Allar doesn't play, and they're going to start a true freshman, different story. But let's just assume that Drew Allard goes and gives it a go. This is going to come down to offensive line, defensive line, in the trenches. Whoever wins that part of the battle is going to win this football game.
Yeah, and they're going to be Ohio State's going to be preparing for two quarterbacks. They would have been preparing for two quarterbacks anyway because Penn State plays two quarterbacks with sophomore Bo Perbula, who does some of the running. But he completed when he came in for Aller, who got hurt against Wisconsin. He completed 11 of 13 passes. Now, not a lot of this stuff downfield, but they do know that he can throw the ball now, and they're going to have to prepare for the running aspect. And we've seen Dylan Gabriel and Dylan Raiola the past two games make some hay in the running game, whether it's just scrambling with Raiola or the read option with Gabriel. So there have been some lanes created by the Ohio State defense that they're going to have to be very, very disciplined, and they'll understand. We talked with Jim Knowles today, defensive coordinator, talking about how they just have to remain disciplined, stick with their fundamentals, and know when Perbula is in the game. They'll point him out and they'll make sure that everybody knows. The interesting thing, one of the interesting things about Penn State is they'll play both of those quarterbacks at the same time. Like in the same play, they'll have Aller lined up or whatever out wide, a receiver, whatever, and they'll do all of this different stuff, run some motion just to hand the ball off to a running back. And between the tackles, they'll do a lot of show you a bunch of different stuff just to do something very basic and keep your mind spinning. And so this is a defense that's going to have to be disciplined throughout, and yet also a defense that's going to stay aggressive because they want to create some problems for whichever quarterback. And even if it's Drew Aller, I think him being in the game provides Ohio State with a better idea of what to expect. And for that, then Ohio State can do what they need to do. When it's going to be Perbula, then you've got to factor in so many different things. And the running game is a thing that the running quarterback issue is something that all defensive coordinators hate, and players hate dealing with it because it creates just an extra issue for you to have to deal with. So he's definitely going to be involved in this one. And, tight end Tyler Warren's going to be carrying the ball as well as a Wildcat quarterback. So they do a lot of different things, some of it more effective than others.
How much are special teams going to play in this?
Well, Ohio State special teams has been very just mediocre. So if special teams are involved in this game, then that's going to be bad news for Ohio State, frankly. But they did a better job this past week of punting, which it's a Big Ten staple. If you can't punt, you can't win, and
right.
they've not been able to flip the field as well as they'd like, and so that's something that's going to be key. The field position, you talk about winning the line of scrimmage, the field position is going to be huge in this one too, because if you're not pinning your opponent inside the 20 or the 15, and instead you're giving the ball at the 30, you're giving them a couple of free first downs, that might be the difference in a scoring drive or a 3-and-out or a 4-and-out or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, the Ohio State kicking game, the place kicking has not been fantastic, and you saw a bad field goal attempt wide right last week. But Jaden Fielding, who's the Ohio State place kicker, made a clutch 40-yarder against Oregon in a tough environment. So he's been able to do that, but you don't really know what you're going to get there. And the return game for Ohio State's non-existent in every single facet. I don't think they really care about it much. I think when Ryan Day got to Ohio State, the offense has always been good enough we don't need to worry about returning the ball, just catch it, and we'll let the offense go 75, 85 yards, whatever it takes, because it's all the same. They're not necessarily getting good yardage from their return game. Although this past week was the first time we've seen Caleb Downs at punt return, and he made some people miss in that one. So that's something to maybe keep in mind for this one.
You have your EA simulator going on in the background there, I see. Are you simulating the Ohio State Penn State game?
In fact, I can give you a score update right now. 10-0 Ohio State in the first quarter.
We can only hope as Ohio State fans. All right. Who you got in the game? Who wins?
Yeah. I have not put a score prediction together yet. I do know after watching the Penn State-Wisconsin game yesterday, I feel better about Ohio State's chances in terms of throwing the ball. I have no expectations for them running the ball in this one. So it'll come down to a fourth quarter again. And I know Will Howard, being a Pennsylvania guy, wanting that Penn State offer and never getting it and being told you're not good enough. Is that going to be enough to drive him? Probably, unless they can't protect his blind side, which, I'm not going to be surprised if Ohio State walks out of this one with a loss, but I think I know they've got the talent to win it. Just got to put it together. And this is going to be a big game, a lot of pressure, and pressure is not always treated the Buckeyes well.
If they lose to Penn State, they're going to beat Purdue because Purdue's just awful. At Northwestern, they'll beat Northwestern. They get Indiana at home, which big plus. And let's say they go on to beat their rival Michigan and they finish 10-2. Do they still make a college football playoff as an at-large?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would. Now you still need to see what everybody else is doing, but you're talking about Ohio State probably being the fourth Big Ten team in that picture, or third or fourth, and so yeah, they'd still get in there. They'd probably get a home playoff game, which Ohio State fans would be furious about initially, but then hopefully they'd get up for whenever whoever comes to town. And I don't know if they'd be good enough for that 5 seed, but that 5 seed is going to be pretty beneficial to whoever gets it this year.
Before I let you go here, what's the status of Zen Mikulski?
They're going to see if he's good to go this week. I was on the sideline when they walked him off, and he was vocally in pain with every step, and then he had to cart him off when he was on crutches. He wasn't putting any weight on any of his legs. So they're going to see if he can go. I asked Ryan Day, so if he can go, is he going to start? And Day said, yeah. And then he kind of later on, somebody was like, are you sure? Well, we'll still see. And kind of surprised that they would still choose to go with them, given how rough that outing went for him. But they're trying to get him to work out his kinks, because I guess they've seen more in practice than we saw in the game. And it's the most painless way, the most seamless way to fix the Josh Simmons absence.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Tony Gerdeman. Again, I'm going to read it verbatim off his Twitter. He's lead beat writer for Buckeye Huddle, covering Ohio State. The Ozone alum. He is a co-host of the At Buckeye Weekly podcast. You can reach him at tonygerdeman@gmail.com. And he also says, be kind instead, which I agree. Tony, thanks for coming on. I know you're busy. I always appreciate it, and enjoy the game this weekend.
Yep. Have a good one. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Thanks, Tony. Again, Tony Gerdeman, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it comes down to whoever wins the battle in the trenches. I just think it's going to be a hell of a game. Getting back to last week, Penn State goes to Camp Randall, beats Wisconsin 28-13. Big win on the road. Anytime you go into Camp Randall, get a victory. Wisconsin was actually up 10-7 at the half, and then Penn State's defense put the clamps on. Drew Allard, like I said, he got hurt. He was 14 of 18, 148 and a touch. Bo Prabula came in 11 of 13, 98 yards and a touch. Katron Allen, 11 carries, 86 yards and a touch. Harrison Wallace, 5 receptions, 67 yards. Zach Wheatley, Zakey Wheatley, 10 total tackles. Braden Locker, Wisconsin, 22 of 42, 217, no touchdowns, and a pick. Tawi Walker, 22 carries, 59 yards, and a touchdown, although Penn State held Wisconsin to under 100 yards. Will Pauling, 8 catches, 79 yards. Hunter Wohler, 11 total tackles for Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin played tough defensively, but then Penn State just wore them down. The lack of the ability for Wisconsin to run the football, I thought, bit them in the ass. Penn State now 7-0 overall, 4-0 in the Big Ten. Wisconsin is 5-3 overall, 3-2 in the Big Ten. In Oregon, handled Illinois 38-9. It was not close. Oregon took the gas off the pedal after halftime. Luke Altmaier for Illinois, 17-35, 161, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Aiden Lowry, 12 carries, 69 yards. Zachary Franklin, 6 catches, 72 yards. Dylan Orozic, 12 total tackles. For Oregon, Dylan Gabriel was 18-26, 291, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Jordan James, 15 carries, 83 yards. Tez Johnson, 6 catches, 102 and a touch. Tasheem Johnson with 10 total tackles. Again, Illinois just could not muster anything offensively. Oregon had almost 550 yards of total offense. Oregon now 8-0 overall, 5-0 in the Big Ten. Your Illini 6-2 overall, bowl eligible, 3-2 in the Big Ten. So now we head to. Oh, by the way, if anybody's wondering, anybody who's watching college football right now, early in the third, Florida International up on New Mexico State 7-6. Louisiana in the second up on Texas State 7-6. Top of the second, Louisiana Tech over Sam Houston 3-2. That's actually early in the second period. If anybody's wondering about the World Series, bottom of the second, the LA Dodgers up 2-0. Do I think that the Yankees would have gotten swept? Hell to the freaking no. Not looking for the Yankees again. What are you going to do? So let's look ahead to the top 25 matchups. Week freaking 10, man. It's unbelievable. Or sorry, week 11. No, my computer's messing with me. It's week 10. Top 25 matchups. I will go down the list here as they are happening in sequential order. Another Friday game for Boise State. San Diego State travels to Boise. Boise favored by 23.5. Boise State is on their way probably to playing UNLV in the conference title. Boise State should have no problem with San Diego State. Boise 44, San Diego State 20. Miami hosts Duke. That'll be at 12 p.m. on ABC and ESPN Plus. Miami's favored by 21.5. I think Duke will be game for a while. Miami wins, though. Miami 38, Duke 21. Also at 12 o'clock on ESPN, number 19 Ole Miss travels to Arkansas. Take on the Razorbacks there at Razorback Stadium. Mississippi's favored by 7. Fayetteville sometimes a tough place to play. I still don't like the way Ole Miss has been playing, but I still think they get the W, even though it's going to be close. Ole Miss 30, Arkansas 23. Number 21 Army, undefeated Army, hosts Air Force. Army's favored by 22.5. This is going to be a blowout. Army 49, Air Force 10. Minnesota travels to number 24 Illinois. Minnesota's favored by 3. This is essentially a pick'em game. I have no idea. This is at 12 p.m. on FS1. I'm going to take Illinois by a smidge. I'm going to go Illinois 31, Minnesota 28. At 3:30 p.m., number 1 Oregon goes to Michigan. Oregon's favored by 14.5. Michigan beats Michigan State, their rivals, with the Paul Bunyan axe. Oregon favored by 14.5. Oregon they got too many horses. Oregon 35, Michigan 20. Number 2, Georgia hosts my Florida Gators at 3:30 p.m. on ABC and ESPN Plus. Ugas favored by 16.5. This could be Billy Napier's death march. I know Florida's been playing better, but the only thing I don't like is the fact that Carson Beck is turning the ball over way too much, which if he does it against Florida, it's going to keep Florida in the game. I'm going to go Georgia 38, Florida 24. Number 11, Iowa State hosts Texas Tech in a Big 12 matchup. Iowa State favored by 13.5. I don't know which Iowa State team is going to show up. I think Texas Tech will probably cover. I'll go Iowa State 34, Texas Tech 24. Number 13, Indiana travels to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. Indiana favored by 7.5. Tricky game for Indiana. Tricky. They better watch it. I still think Indiana gets to win, but it's tricky. Indiana 33, Michigan State 27. Number 17. Oh, that game is on Iowa State's on ESPN at 3:30, and the Indiana game is on Peacock at 3:30. Also at 3:30 on Fox. Number 17, Kansas State travels to Houston in a Big 12 matchup. Kansas State favored by 13.5. Houston playing better. Kansas State got another wake-up call last week. Kansas State 40, Houston 17. $7:30 p.m. on ABC and ESPN Plus. Texas A&M goes on the road to South Carolina. The betting, the Sharks out in Vegas giving South Carolina some props. Texas A&M only favored by 2.5. Somebody knows something. I think Texas A&M drubs them. Texas A&M 41, South Carolina 17. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Louisville travels to Clemson. Clemson favored by 10.5. Clemson coming off a bye. Louisville, an emotional loss against Miami a week and a half ago. I'm going to go Clemson 41, Louisville 28. 7:45 p.m. on the SEC Network. Kentucky travels to take on number 7 Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 16.5. Kentucky having a season to forget. Tennessee's defense should win this game. I'll go Tennessee 34, Kentucky 17. And a huge ACC matchup on the ACC Network at 8 p.m. Number 18 Pittsburgh travels to take on number 20 SMU. SMU favored by 7.5. Both undefeated in ACC play. SMU has something going. I'm going to roll with Pitt in the upset. Most people wouldn't consider an upset. I would consider an upset to travel to SMU. I'll go Pitt 35, SMU 31. And I come to the game of the week. It's a noon kickoff. It's the game of the day. Number 4, Ohio State travels to take on number 3, Penn State. Ohio State's actually favored by 3.5. Evenly matched game. Even if Drew Allard can go, what percent is he? They will probably play both quarterbacks anyway. Will Howard, maybe a revenge game for him, not getting an offer to play at Penn State. He's a Pennsylvania boy in the Philadelphia area, actually. But I don't like the way Ohio State's been running the football. This game will be won in the trenches. Early kickoff. It's probably going to be a whiteout. OSU favored. Penn State will take that as an injustice. So, with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, as soon as this pops up for me here, I have to do it in another edition of You Get the Finger, Penn State. That's right. You get the finger, Penn State. I am taking Penn State to win this game. Penn State 28, Ohio State 24. That's right, Penn State. You get the finger. I thought, give me just a second here as I look for it. Cannot believe this did not pop up right away. I'm going to disappear from the picture. But yes, Penn State, you get the finger. Penn State's going to win this game 28-24. I've got to play the song. For some odd reason, it's not loading up. I can see it spinning here, and it's not loading up, and it's starting to piss me the hell off. Because technology is supposed to make your life somewhat simpler and less complicated, but no, it's just going to sit there and spin and spin and spin for no goddamn reason. Don't you hate that when it just spins? You kind of want to take your fist and sort of like put it through the screen. Again, it's just going to spin. But in any case, Penn State, you, ladies and gentlemen, fans, Penn State fans across the globe, you get the finger this week. 28-24, Penn State. Again, if Drew Allar plays, it's probably not going to be much. Probably be handing the ball off. I just think Penn State's going to win the game in the trenches. Penn State is solid against the run. And, of course, I'm not going to get to play the Penn State fight song because this goddamn laptop sucks out loud. And it just continues to spin. So I apologize to Penn State fans everywhere. But, again, you get the finger. And, again, ladies and gentlemen, if Penn State wins this game, and let's say Oregon struggles, and even though Georgia might win, does Penn State vault up into the number one spot? I'll let you debate that amongst yourselves. Again, you can't see me. I'm ready to heave this goddamn laptop out the window. I apologize again to Penn State fans. I cannot play the Penn State fight song because it's still spinning. It's annoying. But enjoy the games, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the World Series. Hopefully, I'll see everybody tomorrow on another edition of the Locker Room. Oh, there it goes. Go figure. I will play this as fans. Your team will beat Ohio State. I'll talk to everybody later.